Good morning. This is just to show you the difference between elements and atoms and compounds, because it is very confusing. There's lots of words and they all kind of mean what stuff's made of. So you need to know that everything in the whole universe is made out of little particles, and we call these particles atoms. And sometimes all of the particles are exactly the same, like these ones, which are all white. So when all of the particles are exactly the same, all of the atoms are exactly the same, this is called an element, and each one of these is an atom. Okay? Now sometimes we get different types of atom. So let's do some red ones and some blue ones. Now here we have got a compound, and this is a compound because in each of these little particles here there's two different types of atom, and they are chemically joined together. That's why I've stuck them together and I've drawn them all next to each other. So these are chemically stuck together and they're two different types of atom. So this is a compound. Okay, so the blue ones could be an atom that would be one element, and the red ones could be atoms of a different element, but as soon as you've got the two different ones and you combine them together, this becomes a compound. Okay, so I can take the blue ones, and if I put them together just on their own, and that's all I've got now, I don't have a compound anymore because I've only got one type of atom, I've only got one element. And if I took the red ones and put them in a box, that would be an element, but as soon as you've got them stuck together like that, that is a compound. Now just to give you the next level of this, what you could also get is, if I put these in boxes so you can see what we've got. So here's an element because all of the atoms are exactly the same, and here is a compound because all of the atoms all of the particles have got two different types of atom in them and they're chemically stuck together, and this is also an element. And this element is different from this element because these are one type of atom and these are a different type of atom. Okay, so if our blue ones are sodium, then you can call this element sodium because every atom in there is a sodium type of atom. Red ones could be chlorine, so let's do another element. Now this element would be called, oh, pen's broken, would be called chlorine because every single atom in there is a chlorine atom. They're all chlorine atoms, so this is an element because all of the atoms are exactly the same. Now if we take this element, sodium, and this element, chlorine, and we react them together, we can make a brand new substance. If this is sodium and this is chlorine, you might be able to guess what this substance would be called. This would be sodium chloride. And it can't be an element anymore because we've now got two different types of atom and we're chemically sticking them together when the reaction takes place. So now we've got a compound. So this one's an element because all the atoms are the same. This one is a different element because all the atoms are the same as each other, but they're different from these ones. And here's a third element where all of the atoms are the same as each other. And we can take two different elements, or sometimes 3 or 4 or 5, and we can react them together and we can make a new compound. This is a compound because the atoms in it are different, but they're chemically joined together. Now the other one that you might come across is a situation like this. See if you can figure out why this would not be a compound. So we've still got some chlorines, and we have still got some sodiums, but this one is not a compound. So can you see the difference between this one, which is a compound, and this one that isn't? These atoms are not chemically stuck together, chemically joined together. So this can't be a compound. It also can't be an element because all of the atoms inside it are not exactly the same as each other. So this is what we would call a mixture. So this is where you've got different types of substances, different elements or different compounds, and you put them all together, but you don't actually chemically join them together. So I could separate these, I could pull all of the blue ones out and I could pull all the red ones out, and that's what makes it a mixture. I hope that explains things, but this is what everything is made up of. Everything is either an element, a compound, or a mixture. Okay? Anything that's an element will be found on the periodic table. So pick anything off the periodic table and you can find it like this, where all of the atoms are exactly the same. If it's not on the periodic table, then it's a compound. So for example, hydrogen is on the periodic table. It exists as an element where all of the atoms are exactly the same. Oxygen is also an element. It exists where all of the atoms are exactly the same. But water is not on the periodic table. So water is actually a compound. It's where you take two different elements and you combine them together. So you might know that water has the formula H2O, and that shows me it's made out of two separate elements, hydrogen and oxygen. You take those atoms and you chemically stick them together and you make a compound. I really hope that helps, but if it doesn't, pop some more information in the comments and I'll try and answer more questions for you.